Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Joelle Kaufman. She is an author, she is a leadership coach, she is a cancer survivor, author of Crushing the Cancer Curveball, and she's the founder and CEO of GTM Flow. Welcome to the show, Joy.
Thank you for having me, Ajay.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Joel. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll talk about in this backdrop your cancer patient's survival guide and also what lessons one can learn from cancer. We'll talk about all this in that backdrop. But first, Joel, if you can take us a bit about your journey, about your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Sure. So I'm based out of California, but I'm native of New Jersey. I've worked with lots of people in India because I've had a career in tech where I've led marketing and sales for companies in AI and SaaS. But when I was 13, that was the first time I encountered cancer when my mother was diagnosed. And since that time, up until my diagnosis in 2023, I was the 12th in my family. So we've seen the cancer curveball, if you will, quite a number of times. And it actually shaped how I led, how I lead, and how I live. And it's much more than the crisis episode when you're facing cancer. It's really about the filter and the perspective that you get when you or someone you love faces a mortal threat.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, is it about Tell us a bit about this whole thing. How was your reaction? But it was since it was in the family. Were you expecting it? Were you very shaken? What was your reaction to when you heard about your diagnosis?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I really think we have to rewrite the story and the narrative because most people's reaction is fear. Am I going to die? Right? Now, I was expecting, let me rephrase. I wasn't surprised. I was diagnosed the day before I was supposed to have prophylactic surgery to remove my breasts. So the timing was quite surprising. And sure, in that moment, I said, did I make a mistake? Should I have done this earlier? Did I do something? And that's common. When someone gets a diagnosis, often the first question is, what did I do wrong? And the answer is nothing. It's errant cells running amok. Number two is the question, am I going to die? Probably not. 1 out of every 4 people in the world will be diagnosed with cancer. And Ajay, most people don't know that with breast cancer, it's the only statistics I know well, if it is caught early before it has spread throughout the body, which about 93% of breast cancers in the United States are caught early before they've spread, the survival rate is 99%. Okay, that's spectacularly good. So is it pleasant? No, not necessarily. Although, and I write about this in Crushing the Cancer Curveball, I made my cancer year into one of the happiest years of my life. And I want to share with your students in the masterclass how they can do that without having to face cancer. But if they are facing cancer, you can crush that curveball. And it starts with early detection, followed by staunch advocacy and partnering with your medical team. And then the wrapper is the part that you don't need cancer for, which is to line your life with happiness tripwires. Moments of joy, of happiness, positive experiences that release serotonin, oxytocin, other hormones that actually refill your battery for energy and bolster your immune system. But mostly, Ajay, they feel really good.
Of course, we feel really good. And that is where I want to understand from you, Joy, is that what is it that most important thing that can help you win over the cancer? Your internal system that can help you secrete all those emotions, the the happiness around you and within you. Is it about your mindset? Is it about your medical team? What is it that one should start cultivating as soon as they know that they can be or they are susceptible to cancer? And once they are diagnosed, how what is it that they can do about it?
So it's a complicated question because there is no single thing that can guarantee a good outcome. It is the combination of medical care, ideally people who specialize in your type of cancer. But breast cancer alone, there's 120 varieties. So we need to think of cancer not as if the disease is cancer, but that's a class of diseases underneath which are a bunch of different pathologies, all of whom have different treatments. So you want a good doctor. Actually, you want a good team. And you can control maybe finding them and getting involved with them. But after that, you have to trust them and advocate for how you want cancer to impact your life. So, an example, my oncologist suggested that I try to do all of my chemotherapy on the days where she had clinic so that every 3 weeks when I had to see her, it wasn't an extra trip to the hospital. That was lovely. And I was able to do that by planning ahead. So, one, your medical care matters. Two, taking care of your body. And if we go back, you had a guest on actually, and I want to say his name, Brad Kearns, who was talking about the benefit of walking and of sprints. And I'll add, and he did too, lifting heavy weight over your head. You want to do this all the time, not because you might get cancer, but because you will get something. Life is terminal. And the stronger and healthier you are when that something shows up, the better you will respond to whatever treatment you have to go through. So that's number two. Be as healthy and strong as you can. And you can control that 100%. And then the third is mindset, right? And this is not be happy, be positive, be strong. Frankly, that's all putting pressure on somebody to help you feel better. So if we're going to rewrite the story, we have to start with, rather than telling you to be strong, what could I give you that would bring you a smile for a moment, right? So if I said, Ajay, I just loved the examples of breathing that you talked about with Trey, and I really appreciate you spending your time bringing that to the world. I hope that appreciation, what do you feel when I express genuine appreciation? I learned something from your masterclass with Trey. You have a moment, hopefully, where you feel good. The important thing there, Ajay, is not to let it pass you by. You want to stop and, in a moment of mindfulness, recognize, I feel good. That felt nice. And then you can move on from it. But that gift of gratitude, appreciation, love, whatever it is, and that pause to notice it is the secret battery charger. And Ajay, I had my entire cancer journey just peppered with these. I didn't have to think about them, whether it was someone driving me to my infusion because I couldn't drive home because of the medication they gave me made me sleepy. But I didn't want my husband or my sister to have to do it all the time. So my friends did. I got to visit with a friend. Or the music that my son sent me, or the prayer list that my rabbi sent, or the letter I got every week from my other son that I opened in the infusion center and got a surge of connection and of love. None of these are expensive. None of these are elaborate, and none of these are long. Maybe they're 5 seconds to a minute, but each one is just boosting And Ajay, when I got to my 12th infusion and I saw my oncologist, she looked at my labs and said, Joelle, your labs don't look like a cancer patient. I'd never think you were someone who just went through 12 weeks of chemo. I was healthy and strong. I had a great medical team and happiness tripwires. So I want to encourage people, and I'm happy to talk you through how people can identify the ones they already have and just grab onto them and squeeze for that boost that will improve your life.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is where I want to understand from you. One is that information about, firstly about cancer. Should we try and gather as a patient? Should we try and gather as much as information as possible, and get overwhelmed perhaps, or
Hmm.
should we only get only that is required? And how do we know that how much information? Because some people say you got to become half a doctor to get yourself treated because of the type of medical care that is existing today, and it can be very frustrating because uh, you might be the only person who knows about these things in your family, and you are the patient yourself. Help us understand through that dilemma of those times.
Really appreciate you asking that question. One of the things I told people, and I told people that I was diagnosed with cancer the day I was diagnosed because I was supposed to have surgery the next day. And I didn't want people to reach out about the surgery and then have to tell them. And I said, please don't send me Google links. I know the pathology. I don't know the treatment plan, but what I need is an oncologist. I need an expert. I didn't go into the expert with a bunch of links and protocols and clinical trials because I'm talking to an expert, but I did go with a list of questions. So if you're going to be a partner with your medical team, you want to know what questions. And when I talk to people at the beginning of their journey, or if they read the book, right, Crushing the Cancer Curveball, it's going to tell you some of the types of questions you want to ask. And, you know, sometimes the doctor and the nurse practitioner and the medical assistant would have covered them anyway, but make your list. Make sure you have someone else in the room because you're not going to hear all the answers because it's emotional. And today we can use recording, AI recording to make transcripts, which is good because then we can go back and look and then ask more questions, right? And the questions aren't to challenge your medical team's judgment. They're to clarify why that protocol. What happens if that protocol doesn't succeed? I wanted to know, for example, unlike my sister and my mother, they were recommending chemotherapy before surgery for me. And my first reaction, Ajay, was, I'm having the surgery tomorrow. Let's get it out and we'll move forward from there. And my doctors said, time out. For your protocol, your kind of cancer, again, cancer is a class, not one disease. For your specific pathology, we see better results doing chemotherapy first. I said, well, so we're not doing surgery tomorrow. I said, that's interesting. When I met with my oncologist, one of my questions was, why is that? And her answer for my pathology was, your tumor is very metabolic. We believe it's going to absorb a lot of chemo, and we want to observe how the chemo impacts the tumor so that we know, one, do we need to use a different chemo and more chemo, or can we stop? And two, so we know when to have your surgery. So my tumor, Ajay, was 9 millimeters. I mean, it's tiny, right? But they were able, through manual and through MRIs, to observe that it was dissolving, disappearing through the less toxic chemo. And for me, I was lucky. I didn't have to do the more toxic chemo. So it's all about the questions, but there's other kinds of questions like, I would like to go see my son's first collegiate baseball game. It's across the country. Is it safe for me to fly? And they said, yes, actually, as long as your labs look good, it's safe. When I asked them, how do I keep my hair? I mean, Ajay, my chemo was only 2 years ago. So I did not lose my hair. People think you're going to, but I didn't. because of a new technology called cold capping. And it doesn't work with all chemos and it doesn't work for all people. But I asked, they said yes. I asked how I could be as aggressive as possible in minimizing side effects. And they gave me suggestions and I did them. So you can be a highly informed patient without trying to become an expert in oncology, because it turns out that's a fairly detailed specialty. And what you want is an oncologist who's an expert in your type of cancer, if you can. And if you can't, because you live in a place where they're not nearby, and that's okay, you can use telehealth to get a second opinion. And often your local doctor will collaborate with an expert at an academic center, and you can get the same results. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Joel. Let's get more answers through your book. When did you think of writing this book? When we exactly? Yes.
Yeah. So, because I've faced cancer in my family for 42 years, a lot of people would call me, even though I hadn't been a patient. And so I always had the thought in my mind, it would be good to capture this stuff I say repeatedly in a more scalable, more accessible manner, because not everyone knows me and can call me. And there's other people who have wisdom as well. When I was diagnosed, one of the lessons from my mother's and my sister's and all the other cancers was that it's very tiring for caregivers. And one of the things that's very tiring is updating people and telling the same story over and over again. So I used a platform called Caring Bridge. It's free and it's supported by donations. And I started writing. And I wrote first to give people a place to get updates so they wouldn't ask my husband, my kids, my family, and that they could use their time with the people who love me and with me to share happiness tripwires rather than drain with what's the update. But I found, Ajay, that it was a wonderful way for me to process the experience. And people were reaching out to me who had no connection to cancer. They just were enjoying the prose and the way I was approaching life. This idea of integrating happiness tripwires and recognizing them throughout your life, it makes everything better. It makes your teams more productive. It makes your decision making clearer. It gives you more energy. And so people were reading this and saying, you're doing this while you have cancer. And I said, well, I have to, because I want to be as strong as possible to face the cancer, but you can do it anyway. And so when I finished treatment, I had this long journal, and I said, should I turn it into a memoir? Well, you know what? My story's not that dramatic. And it was actually really special and lucky. But the how to approach this, whether you're the patient or someone who loves someone who's facing cancer, there's a real need for that, and for a story that is optimistic, not angry. I mean, cancer happens. It didn't target me. It happens. I didn't do anything wrong. It happens. And yes, it derailed my life for a period of time. But then afterwards, I looked back, and surviving it made my life better. I was more connected. I was more intentional. I felt more love and support. And I could see clearly what was important and what wasn't. So that's what led to the book. Is I wanted to give people a roadmap, a playbook, how to get through this, how to be a good support person, how to be as good a patient as you want to be, and take the uncertainty and unmooring that happens when you're diagnosed and throw a life ring that says you can do this. You're going to do this.
Absolutely, absolutely, Joel. So after diagnosis, one of the things that can, demotivate or just shatter somebody is about good either lack of resilience or even just the impact of listening to this. How does one get resilience from? Where do they get this resilience from? If it is within them, how do they keep it intact? If it is less, where do they get it from? Is there a place they can buy it? Have you mentioned it, anything about it in the book?
So, where can you get resilience? It's interesting. Statistically, mothers of young children have better outcomes than almost everybody else because they are focused on what they're going to live for. And so I think the first step to finding more resilience is picking something beyond your period of treatment that you want to live for and grabbing onto. So I think that helps. I created celebrations at intervals throughout my cancer journey, and I recommend everyone do that. What do you celebrate? I celebrated that I got through 6 weeks of chemo. Seemed good. I celebrated the end of chemo. I celebrated the day before surgery to thank my body and the parts of my body I was about to remove and just make it a little bit lighter. So, because it's heavy. That's one way, right? Set some celebrations, have something to look forward to. Number two, it's very tempting to isolate yourself because you don't want to be a burden to other people. I think mostly that does not serve. You want to allow people to support you. And sometimes people are afraid, what if no one will? You know, it's amazing. The people who support you are not always the people you expect, right? So you need to share with your community. And I recommend sharing what's going on, what you want and what you don't want, and then being open to what comes towards you. Because there are people who, like, I can't handle this, and they go the other way, and that's okay. And then there are people who you weren't even close with. I'll tell you a story, it's in the book. One of the women who was diagnosed with cancer had young children and is a single mom. She was very worried because her cancer was not as early as mine. And, you know, it's very heavy. My children are young. What happens if something happens to me? My parents are older. What happens? And as she's telling people about her diagnosis and the treatment plan, she gets a call, not from people she knew well, but from people who were in leadership at her kids' school. And they said, we'd like to talk to you. We know and love your children, and we'd like to offer that if something should happen to you, we'll raise your children in our community. She was blown away. Right? These people, they had raised their children, but they said, this is something we can offer. We hope we don't have to do it, but your kids won't have to move. They will be loved. Your family can be as involved with them as you want, but we offer you that. And for her, talk about a happiness tripwire. It was like a weight was lifted, but it wasn't somebody who was already in her life. It was somebody new. So the universe, when you need resilience, if you ask for it and you're open to it, so it comes from surprising places.
Absolutely. When you need resilience, it comes from surprising places, and you talked about uh, the universe. So, does cancer bring lessons? Is it because the universe wants to give you lessons in your life, and it sends cancer, or is it, is it something else? How should one understand it if we want to look at it from the way you talked about resilience?
Yeah. So cancer is an is, right? It's something that happens because cells run amok, they start over reproducing, and your own body can't stop them and eradicate them. I don't believe there is some higher purpose in that chain of biological misfires. But, and I say this with all of my clients, you cannot choose the pitch that gets thrown at you. You only choose the swing. I think the same thing goes with cricket, right?
Right.
So, right. You don't get to pick what comes at you. It just does. And there's no, the ball doesn't have a conscience and a purpose. It's not metaphysical. It's just a thing. But you have a choice. And your power comes in recognizing, now I see this thing and I have a choice about how I want to face it. And that choice, when done with power, with knowledge, with confidence, with love, that makes all the difference. Now, having made that choice and having lived according to that choice and done the actions mandated by your choice, that's where the lessons come. The lessons come from having tried what you tried, what worked, what didn't. What did you learn? What did you learn about people? What did you learn about who you want to be? What did you learn about your strength? What did you learn about your weakness? What did you learn about your priorities? What's important? So when my mother was diagnosed in 1983, it was very isolating. My parents didn't feel they could ask people for support. They have a very strong marriage, so they leaned on each other. And they, brought us in and, as a family, we got very, very close. So that was the gift, right? We have this close family. And when, as an adult, various things would go wrong, because that's life, things go wrong, my perspective was, okay, that sucks, but it's not cancer. Right? So I had this, but it's not cancer, so I can deal with that. And my natural resilience kept building from these experiences. And I think that is one of the gifts. Let me share another story from the book. There's a woman I interviewed. Her name is Cindy. She's in the book. She has stage 4, which is metastatic breast cancer. And she was diagnosed when she was 37, when her youngest child was about 11 months old. And she has 3. And she said, I have currently no active disease, which is wonderful. I decided after my diagnosis and initial treatment, we figured out that what I really wanted to do was visit every state in the United States. There are 50, and like India, it's very big, right? So this is a very big thing. I want to visit all 50 states with my 3 kids. And she said, Joelle, I always wanted to do that. But it was the cancer that said, I need to do it now. So cancer forces you to be present and to say life itself is a gift and it's fleeting. So what do I want to do? What do I want to do with this gift today? And it can be as much as I want to call my mother, because thankfully my mother and father are still alive. I want to make sure they know I love them. And that's my thing for the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I, I'll ask an obvious question. Who is this book for? Is it for people only with cancers? Or is it with
No.
those people?
So here's what I want to say, Ajay. My book is not a downer. My book will make you laugh. It's available in India, on Amazon India. You will laugh out loud in parts. You will shake your head like that's just nutty, right? Because like the whole process of cancer and treatment and life is absurd. Like the whole thing. And you just have to get through it. It's ideal for the newly diagnosed, because that's when you're the most confused, the most scared. And unless you have the benefit that I have of, oh, this again, which I hope you don't, it's the first time. Now, Ajay, anything the first time is harder and scarier and unfamiliar by definition. So anyone who doesn't want to feel that way the first time, read the book. Have it on the bookshelf or in your virtual bookshelf. Use it. It is statistically impossible that people listening to this live cast don't know somebody facing cancer right now. Chapter 15 is a laundry list of ideas of what you can do that can help them. It's great. So I really love chapter 15. It's one of my favorites. But the idea that only cancer patients need this, no. Cancer is part of life. It's just one of many curveballs we see. And if you can learn how to crush that curveball, you can probably crush any.
Absolutely. How did this cancer journey reshape your leadership style, Joy?
So, because it started when I was so young, I adopted a leadership style that was about time. Time is precious, and people are really important. So, the curveball method says you're going to see curveballs. And as a leader, I expected to. I even, frankly, liked them. That was fun to solve problems. But you want to be able to stop being a tactical hero and be a strategic leader, which means going back to Trey, you need to take a breath and pause. You need to see the curveball. You need to see how it's moving, what it looks like. And that just takes a little bit, a moment or two. You need to know what your strengths are. And that can be personal strengths, but also the strengths on your team. We don't face any curveballs really alone. There are always people. If it's cancer, it's your medical team and your caregiving team and your friends. If it's work, it's your colleagues, your peers, your subordinates, what have you. It can even be your customers and partners. Then you want to adopt a mindset. And this is critical. And you asked about this earlier. You can have a victim mindset, and that will drain your energy. I choose a champion's mindset. I can figure this out. I can crush this. Doesn't mean I will. There's a randomness to what the outcome is, but I can. I get to take a swing at the plate, and I'm glad for it. So that's a very energizing mindset, right? And then we want to communicate. And communication is the lever of leadership, right? How do we describe the situation we're in? Again, are we a victim or are we a champion? Same situation, different mindset. How do we deal with how other people react to it and meet them where they're at so that they can see it and they can start the process of what are my strengths? What's my mindset? What are our alternatives for how to deal with this? And then we use communication to align on a path forward until we get more data. So all of my experiences with cancer, plus a degree at the University of Michigan in leadership, in organizational studies, really started to shape. And then I got an MBA that further shaped how do we use our experiences to make us more effective leaders and to give us perspective. Often I'd say, nobody's dying. That's good. So now that we know nobody's dying, what do we want to do first?
Absolutely. In this book of yours, which is one most very thing that is, you would want to share with the world. Okay, this is the one you talked about, chapter 15, but is there anything in particular, any particular line, any particular words or paragraph that you would want to share, that this is what is your whole book is about, or this is what the crux of the whole book is about?
Yeah, so the whole book is about approach, right? What is your approach to your life? Whether that is when you're facing cancer, a business problem, or even something good. What is your approach? And you can develop resilience, develop strength to be part of your approach long before you're facing a curveball. And so when you read the book, the whole baseball metaphor runs through the whole thing, but it is about having an intentional approach and then making adjustments to your approach based on new data. And if that's all people get and they don't buy the book, think about that. What's your approach? What are you going to do first? And what adjustments can you make based on new data?
Absolutely. There is so much to learn from you, Joel, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn from you, learn more about your journey, learn from your book, learn from your leadership style, leadership coaching, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
So if you're interested in the book, I would recommend going to joellekaufman.com, so spelled just like it's on the screen. There's a mailing list you can sign up for. I only use that to tell you when the book is available or different versions. You'll find a workbook for actually interacting and creating your approach. You'll find all kinds of tools, digital tools to help you, and even an AI where you can ask me questions. So I'm available 24/7 to everybody through my website. And of course, if you want to talk to me through the website, there's a contact me, as well as Instagram at Grit Growth Resilience, or on LinkedIn at Joelle Kaufman. If what you want to do is apply the curveball approach to your leadership and up-level your impact going from tactical hero to strategic leader, then you should go to GTM Flow, which is G as in George, T as in Tom, M as in Mary, FLOW, flow.com, and go to contact, and you can reach out to me, and we'll spend 15, 20 minutes together and see what we can learn about your current approach, and if there's a way we can improve your approach and improve your impact.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And the book is available in India on Amazon and around the world.